Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Mr. Buddy here, and in this video, I'm going to be going over all of the ideas and behind the scenes stuff I cut out of my What If I Had a Pokemon Evil Team video. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, a little while ago, I made a video showing off what my evil Pokemon team would be like. My team's name was Team Buddy, and I went through all the various details about them, like why they had a very 1950s aesthetic to them, their goal of trying to turn everyone into their friends, and even the in-universe backstory for me creating Team Buddy. Now, even though I went over quite a lot of details in the video, there were still a few things I took out of it just so it didn't become overly long and flowed a little more smoothly. I never really planned on making a removed ideas video to talk about all that stuff, but after getting so many positive responses and comments asking me to share what I cut out, I finally gave in, and that's exactly what today's video is going to be. I'm going to go through all the things I either cut out of my Evil Team video, didn't get to use, or changed in the final version. Now before we get started, just a couple of things. This probably goes without saying, but I highly recommend seeing my What If I Had a Pokemon Evil Team video before watching this one, because this video is going to talk about things I cut out of that video, and it probably won't make much sense if you haven't seen my original video on the topic. Another thing I wanted to mention is that this video isn't going to be quite as polished as my official Evil Team video, and I'm also doing this partially unscripted. This is really meant to be more of a bonus video, if you will, and because I'm hard at work with the regional video currently, I don't have a ton of spare time to edit this. It's still gonna be fine, I think, because it's really just me sharing ideas I wasn't able to put into a video, but if you're expecting some energetic and crazy editing, you might be a little disappointed with how many still pictures are in this. Alright, the final thing worth bringing up is that I wanted to officially say that I am currently working on a sequel for my Evil Team. I won't spoil too much about it, but part 2 of Team Buddy's story is going to take place in the Alola region, and be almost like a pseudo-sequel to Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Unfortunately, because Ultra Sun and Moon aren't out as of the time I'm making this video, I have to wait a few months to see how their stories play out before I start going all in on writing part 2 of Team Buddy's saga. But regardless, there's still a lot of early ideas I'm thinking of, and I just wanted to assure you guys that I am indeed working on a sequel. Okay, I think it's time we get to talking about why you even clicked on this video in the first place, so without further ado, I present to you all the cut ideas and content from my What If I Had a Pokemon Evil Team video. Alright, let's start off with the concept art and take a look at the sketches of the grunts. First off, before we start detailing them, huge shout out to Bonus Level for all the incredible Team Buddy character art. She really brought Team Buddy to life, and from the grunts to the admins to the leader designs, I just think everything about Team Buddy. I want to give her a huge thank you in this video because she did fantastic work on them, and if you haven't already, go check out her art in the description. Let's dive into some of the early grunt sketches. Now, initially, there were actually 4 designs I chose from, and truth be told, I thought they were all awesome. They really do feel like they came from the 50s, and maybe it's just because I'm really indecisive when I'm picking between things that I like, but it was absolutely brutal trying to decide which variants of the grunts to go with for the final video. Not really a ton of other things to say about the grunt sketches, so let's move on and take a look at some of the early designs for the admins. Now, it's kind of an interesting story about the admins of Team Buddy, because originally, at least in the concepting stage, there was only supposed to be 2. There was going to be a very rockabilly-styled girl and a greaser-inspired guy. Now, where things kind of got changed up is that while I was able to decide on one of the greaser dudes to be an admin, which we now know as Danny, I literally could not decide between the rockabilly girl designs. I talked a lot about how much I like the 50s aesthetic in my Evil Team video, and seeing Bonus Level's take on rockabilly trainers resulted in me loving both of their designs so much that I just couldn't decide which one to go with. Eventually I realized though, and this is gonna sound like kind of a lame realization, that I could just have 3 admins on my team. The only reason I was planning for 2 at first was because a lot of evil teams like Team Aqua and Magma have the format of 1 leader and 2 admins. And for whatever reason, when I was planning Team Buddy, that was the structure I was thinking about. I then remembered that there were teams like Team Galactic and Team Flare that had 3+ admins, and long story short, I decided to make both of these designs into Team Buddy admins. The first became Rosie and the second one Cherry. Quick side note about the admins before we move on, but all the guesses in the comments about where their names originated from are pretty accurate. Rosie's name comes from Rosie the Riveter, Danny's name comes from Danny Zuko, one of the greasers and main characters from the movie Grease, and Cherry's name is partially inspired by Cherry Valance in the book The Outsiders. Next up, let's take a look at some of Buddy Eyes Fennel's early sketches. Her clothing design was already super on point with the 50s aesthetic combined with her normal style and color scheme, so what the different sketches highlight are various 50s hairstyles for her. Why I ended up going with option A, otherwise known as the Beehive, otherwise known as the Bayhive, I am so sorry for that joke, is because I felt like that hairstyle was the most different from how she normally looks. What I wanted to highlight when somebody got forcibly turned into a Team Buddy member was how different they would be, and I figured that because Fennel usually has her hair down normally, that having it up when she's buddyized would really showcase how different she would be alongside her 50s style clothing. I was a little bit worried at first that Fennel might look too different with such a contrasting hairstyle and design compared to how she normally appears, but Bonus Level absolutely crushed it. The final buddyized Fennel design still looks like her and has flourishes of her official design, but is also very much rooted in the 50s style of Team Buddy. Alright, the final character sketches to show off are the ones of me as the leader. So there were 4 different Mr. Buddy design sketches initially, and I had to choose 2 of them. One nice guy version and one rocker greaser version. Now when I saw the pompadour and glasses, I immediately knew that was the one. It was kind of funny and goofy, but there was also a part of me that thought it was just so awesome. So I 100% knew that that was the one I was gonna go with for the greaser design right from the start. The nice guy buddy version was a little bit tougher to decide between, but ultimately I went with the one holding the pipe because he gave off a really 50s father type vibe that I thought fit in with Team Buddy's style pretty well. One last thing I'll quickly throw in regarding the Mr. Buddy designs is that I really like the other design of the rocker greaser version, and rather than just keeping it relegated to being an unused sketch, I decided to include it as a representation of myself in the past, the young Buddy if you will. I feel like this helped keep the past and present separated in the video, and I also got to show off this rad design that normally wouldn't be seen. That's pretty much everything regarding the early concept art sketches, with a couple behind the scenes details included, so let's move on to the next part of all the cut content, which is about a song I removed from the final video. Now when I say song, I'm not talking about background music, but rather, there was actually going to be a song that I would sing in the video when you first arrive at the Buddy building. Okay, I know this idea sounds kind of weird, even for my 50s era evil team, but the entire reason I wanted the song in the video in the first place was to pay homage to musicals that were either made in the 50s or were set in the time period. I didn't want the whole video to become a musical, but I was planning for there to be just a quick moment with a really upbeat song that I would sing. I'm sure some people out there want to know specifics, so I guess I'll go over it quickly. Well, I had a lot of ideas for possible songs to sing, one of which would have been my own take on Greased Lightning from Grease. What I ultimately decided to go with would have been a parody of The Nicest Kids in Town from the musical Hairspray. The new title of the song was The Nicest Team in Town, and the idea was that you would get to the Buddy building for the first time, go up to the second floor, and there'd be a small scene where I'd be singing and performing this song with a bunch of grunts and Pokemon dancing around me. Unfortunately, I didn't end up saving the original take I did of the song, but for this cut content video, I actually went back and recorded part of it so you guys could get a feel for what it would have been like. I'm gonna apologize in advance for what you're about to hear because I'm not really a great singer, so please just brace yourselves. I know I'm not great. Here we go. Here is The Nicest Team in Town as sung by me.
Hey there, people of Unova! Don't change that channel, because it's time for the Mr. Buddy Show! Brought to you by Rare Candy. Oh, every afternoon when the clock strikes 4, a crazy bunch of trainers crash through that door, yeah. Well, we want to help the region and befriend everyone. If you're nice to us and help us out, then this will be fun. You'll never see us frown, cause we're the nicest team in town. Oh, every afternoon we spread around Unova, helping people and the Pokemon unite with each other, yeah. And to those who laugh and mock or try to stand in our way, we can't promise that we won't use force, but we'll find a way. We'll make sure you become part of the nicest team in town. A nice friendly team who likes to brighten your day. If you try to run, we'll drag you away. And I'm the man who keeps it spinning round, Mr. Buddy with the latest, greatest Unova sound. So every afternoon we come out and sing, in the hopes that our song will bring you in. Bop it up. forever. Forget about your anger and your sadness flew. When you join a team, we'll be friends and your Pokemon too. You'll never be alone, you're with the nicest team in town.
After hearing it again, I kinda wish I put it in. I know I can't sing, and the only reason I cut it out of the video was because I felt like I couldn't sing it that well, but really the overall style and theme of the song I think fits Team Buddy extremely well, so I don't know, I regret taking it out, but maybe in the sequel video I'll be able to squeeze it in, but regardless, that's the song I ended up removing from my Evil Team video. Alright, the next thing I wanted to talk about was some of these smaller removed ideas and changes in the video. These aren't quite as big or significant as the expanded backstory or more buddy-ized people ideas that we'll talk about in a second, but these are still things that I cut out of the video that I feel are worth bringing up. So the first removed idea is that originally when you break into the Buddy building to shut down the mist emitter, you would have had to go through a level of the building that contained a laboratory where all the dream mist was replicated, and I would have explained a little bit more about how exactly the buddyizing process works. You do get a small glimpse in the final video of how people get turned into Team Buddy members with a picture of the salon and the hair dryers, but originally there would have also been a scene in this lab that showed off more details into how Team Buddy does it all. The reason I cut this scene out is because I felt like I was able to explain the Lucid Mist well enough through the interactions with Fennel that people got the general idea of what it could do and how it worked, without me having to over-explain everything about it. Alright, the other and final small detail I took out of the video was a few lines of dialogue that various characters said. Really, this one isn't a huge deal, but there are a couple lines of dialogue I cut from the final video, because I either didn't write the line well enough and it sounded weird when I tried to say it out loud, which was the case with a lot of the 50s slang I said, or the dialogue I recorded wasn't necessary to the overall story. Even though there was a somewhat large amount of dialogue cut out of the video, none of it really mattered in the grand scheme of things, and the final video gets the point across just as well as it would have had I not taken out some of the unnecessary voice lines. Let's move on to the last topic to talk about in this removed idea tour, which is all about what I consider to be the big things I took out of the video. An expanded backstory for my evil team, and a subplot involving more characters becoming members of Team Buddy. Let's start with the expanded Evil Team backstory. I feel like when I mentioned in the official video that I cut about 3 to 4 pages of backstory involving the Evil Team out of the video, that a lot of people assumed there was a ton of really major and crucial details I took out. But that's not really the case. What I cut out of Team Buddy's backstory is interesting, I feel like, and definitely more important than like the Lucid Mist lab scene I took out, but I wouldn't say these backstory details absolutely needed to be in the story to tell it properly. Speaking of which, let's actually jump in and get into what the cut story details are. I'm gonna present it like I would have had it been part of the finished video, but keep in mind that I am heavily summarizing it because there are 3 pages I took out. Okay, so where all this additional backstory fits in is right after you're introduced to young Buddy and learn all about my style and how I'm shunned from people, and right before I became a trainer. In this in-between time period, there was a moment where I was walking through Burbank City when I would suddenly hear the familiar jeering of the crowd. At this point, I was used to people having a somewhat adverse reaction to me, but surprisingly, the crowd's ridicule wasn't directed at me. Instead, the people were being rather unkind to a girl who was sporting a very rockabilly type style. It's clear that she was getting very frustrated by the crowd annoying her, and knowing that feeling all too well, I stepped in to try and disperse them away from her. Unfortunately, that only made the crowd worse, and together, me and this rockabilly girl got away from them as fast as we could. I took her to an abandoned building, which is where I usually hang around, and she introduces herself as Cherry. This is the first meeting I had with my future admin, and the two of us ended up becoming friends. As two people who, because of our styles and interests, were rejected by everybody, we easily found companionship in each other. As the months went by, we became fledgling trainers, and also found 2 other people to join our crew, which you guys know as Rosie and Danny. At this point, I hadn't formed Team Buddy yet, so we were just a group of people who had similar interests that liked hanging around each other. Now, one of the things that was also happening during this time, and had started to happen a little bit before Rosie and Danny joined the group, is that Cherry and my character were starting to form a romantic relationship. It wouldn't be a fanfiction type story without some kind of romance somewhere, and Cherry and young Buddy were definitely sharing some mutual attraction for each other. While I'm sure some people are glad that I cut this cheesy fanfiction-y love story out of the final video, I actually kind of regret doing it because I had planned on my character's relationship with Cherry playing more into the storyline. I never got far enough with this idea to write down specific lines of dialogue or anything, but I think Cherry and my character's romance could have brought a more interesting dynamic to the final part of the story, where Cherry and the Abbins decide to turn against my plan. Once again, I never got to a point where I had ideas or lines of dialogue I was super satisfied with, but I imagine that had I kept this romantic element in, that Cherry would have been the person to snap me back to my senses before I made a terrible wish with Jirachi. Alright, jumping back to the backstory, after we had assembled our greaser rockabilly group of friends, our happy days were cut short when Team Plasma invaded the region. The rest of the backstory plays out exactly how it did in the official video. I try to start a friendly group to help Universe people with my admins, we get rejected so many times that I go kind of crazy, and then I start the Team Buddy scene in the final video. And that's basically all the backstory related stuff I cut out of my first Evil Team video. I know I was able to summarize it pretty quickly here, but in the actual script I wrote, there's a lot of dialogue from each of the characters that made these removed scenes roughly around 3 pages in length, which I felt made the entire backstory part of the video just a little bit too prolonged. I will say, however, that even though this expanded backstory isn't in the full video, I still consider 100% canon to Team Buddy's story, and I'll probably even touch upon parts of it in the sequel video. No spoilers for part 2 of Team Buddy's story, but I definitely think my character's relationship with Cherry could be explored more in the next video. Alright, we've covered the backstory pretty well, so let's jump over to the other big thing I removed, which was a subplot involving a lot more Unova characters becoming members of Team Buddy. So let's rewind a little bit. When I finished the rough draft of my script initially, it was pretty much the script that I turned into the final video that you've seen. Now, I was very happy with this version of the script I made, but I also felt like maybe the Lucid Mist wasn't being shown off enough, and that the player wouldn't feel like it was a big threat. You do hear that many of the grunts are regular people that got turned into Team Buddy members, and you also see the effects of the Lucid Mist with Fennel, but I felt like maybe these 2 examples weren't enough to really push how dark Team Buddy's intentions were. This is when I decided to make an alternate draft of the script that had more buddy-ized characters in it to really push how unsettling and dangerous the Lucid Mist and Team Buddy's plan was. In the end, I didn't wind up going with this version of the story because it added a ton of pages and would have been over an hour in length, but I still really like the general idea of this variant of the script, and you can bet that part 2 of Team Buddy's saga will be taking inspiration from this removed idea. So what would have happened in this draft is that alongside Fennel, who still gets turned into a Team Buddy scientist, there would have been 4 other characters that would be buddy-ized as well. Rather than just listing them off, I thought we'd run through how they would have fit into this alternate story, just so this section is a little more exciting. Also, quick side note, I don't have any art for them, so just imagine that they all look really classy and friendly. So all the way up to the moment after you go through the buddy building, this version of the story is exactly the same as the other. Where the differences come to play, however, is when you reach Driftvale City. Now, the buddy-ized person here would be Driftvale's gym leader, Clay. What really drew me to wanting Clay to be one of the people that gets forced into being a Team Buddy member is how opposite he normally is from the team. Clay is a very gruff ground-type gym leader that doesn't really take a lot of nonsense, and I thought having him become a very nice, pleasant person because of the Lucid Mist would really show off how powerful it is, and how kinda messed up Team Buddy's plan to do this to everyone in the region is as well. As far as what Clay would do, he would still be the town's gym leader. He'd have an entirely different design and say very friendly things to you, but he'd still be the ground-type gym leader that you have to battle. Now, after defeating Clay and getting his gym badge, you carry on with your journey and arrive in Mistralton, where all of the airport storage stuff goes down with Danny and the Grunt stealing a shipping container. This leads into the next buddy-ized character, which also involves another idea that I ended up cutting out. So in this script, alongside all these Unova characters becoming members of Team Buddy, there was also going to be a rival that you traveled with. Just for the sake of clarity, I'm gonna show Hugh in this example, but ideally this rival would have their own design. Now, the rival would show up and battle you a couple times throughout the region, as most rivals do, and when everything happens at the Mistralton storage, they'd arrive after Team Buddy leaves and would be absolutely shocked that Team Buddy is secretly evil. That's when you get the call from Professor Juniper, who asks you to go to her lab, and you and your rival head there to talk to her. What happens here is after you, Juniper, and your rival discuss what to do about Team Buddy for a while, your rival gets super fired up and says that they're going to the Buddy building right now to try and battle some sense into them. You and Juniper try to calm your rival down, but before you know it, they're out the door and on their way to Castelia. Juniper asks that you go to the Buddy building and check it out and make sure your rival hasn't done anything too reckless, and when you arrive you find that, much like in the other script, the entire building has been locked down. Also, your rival is nowhere to be found. Now I'm sure you guys can see where this is going, but before we get to the big reveal, we should go through the rest of the story leading up to that moment. After leaving the buddy building, you continue your journey until Juniper asks you to go to the Dream Yard. You go there and battle Fennel and Cherry, Fennel tells you all about the mist emitter, and then you return to the buddy building ready to take down everybody. Now the buddy building the second time is where more differences in the script are apparent. In this version, all 3 of the admins are present in the basement, and the idea I had was that you would have to fight 2 of them that are chosen at random. After you beat them, they would give you the roof key and you rush up through the building to get to me. Right in front of the roof door, however, you're stopped by your rival who, and I'm sure you guys already guessed this, would be the next buddy-ized character you would encounter. You would have a battle with them, which would be pretty similar to a normal rival battle, except they would have a fairy type on their team, and once you beat them, they would somewhat return to normal like Fennel did when you defeated her. After this, you go to the roof and battle me, and once I'm defeated, I change into my true form of a greaser and flee the building. This leads into another divergence in the script, which is that when I'm running away from the buddy building, rather than getting all my admins with me, I instead flee the building solo, leaving everybody behind. The idea with me leaving my admins behind was that this moment would be when the admins not necessarily turn on me, but realize that Team Buddy's plans might be going too far, and they ask you to try and stop me. Unfortunately, the admins don't know where I've gone, and Fennel, who suddenly appears on the roof, chimes in and says that she feels like she'll remember where I've went soon and she'll call you. Fast forward a little bit in the story to when Fennel calls you and says to go to Verbank. When you go to Team Buddy's hidden hideout in Roxy's gym, rather than battling Danny there, you instead battle a Team Buddy version of Roxy. Kind of like what I talked about before with Clay and how I chose him to be one of the buddy-ized people because of how different he'd be, Roxy was another person I had chosen for a similar reason. Roxy is this very punk rock gym leader whose style is basically the complete antithesis to Team Buddy. And once again, to really push how evil Team Buddy's plan is, I thought battling a buddy-ized Roxy in Verbank would be a great way to highlight what the Lucid Mist can do. After you defeat Roxy and learn about the meteor crater nearby and my plan to use Jirachi's wish power, you run to the crater battling through grunts until you reach the hole in the meteor wall. Normally, this would be where Rosie and Cherry have a double battle with you, but with them now somewhat against Team Buddy's actions, I had to come up with a different trainer to stop you. Enter Cynthia. I'm gonna go off script a little bit here because I 100% regret not being able to put this into the final version of the video. I tried so hard, like even when I went back to the other version of the script, I tried to, get Cynthia in somehow, but I wasn't able to do it. I don't know, something about the idea of having to fight essentially a Pokemon champion before you're even done with the game. Oh man, it sounds awesome and crazy to me. I'm sorry, I'm rambling now. This is why I don't go off script, but I love the idea. I try hard to make it work. It's gonna show up in the next one. Okay, so let's get back on topic with the script. So as far as Cynthia's team when she battles you is concerned, because she's literally a champion, I had to somehow restrict her team so she wouldn't be too overpowered. What I decided to do was reduce her team down to 5 Pokemon, which would be Spiritomb, Lucario, Togekiss, Glaceon, and of course her Garchomp. I know she'd still be crazy powerful, but she is technically meant to be the second to last boss of Team Buddy, so I think she has to be pretty tough. After you beat her, she returns to normal, and the rest of the story plays out exactly how it did in the official video. You go into the crater and defeat me, I give a small speech about friendship while disbanding Team Buddy, and then I disappear with my admins. And that's pretty much everything regarding the alternate version of the script that included more buddy-ized characters. Now why I ultimately ended up cutting this subplot out of the final video and going with the other version of the script is because this more buddy-ized script added about 4 pages to the overall length. Once again, you might be wondering how on earth can 4 characters add in 4 pages, but there was a lot more dialogue with all of them, and more parts where I tied everything together. Cynthia might have seemed like a somewhat random choice, but in the script I actually explained a little bit about how she would have ended up buddy-ized while on vacation at her villa in Undella Town, and all the other characters were given more screen time as well. I really wanted to go with this idea in the final video, but alas, including these additional Team Buddy characters added just a little bit too much to the overall runtime of the video, so I decided to go with the other script I had written. And that's all the cut ideas and content from my What If I Had a Pokemon Evil Team video. Hopefully this wasn't too boring for anybody out there to watch, but after being absolutely floored by your guys' positive responses to the original video, I knew I had to make this bonus video to share all the things I removed from it initially. Some of the stuff you'll probably see incorporated in future Team Buddy videos, and other things will probably stay as unused ideas. Anyways, what do you guys think? Do you like any of these ideas better than what I went with in the final video? Maybe you think I should have included all the backstory details. Let me know what you guys think of all this in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later, for Alligator.